So it looks like Bob Lazar was correct. The US government has admitted that they have recovered off-world objects not made on this Earth.
But apparently, just recovered are off-world vehicles not made on this Earth. That's a direct quote.
You see, if you want to know the truth about UFOs, you actually have to look in the Bible.
The universal story agrees with the record of every major culture of the ancient world in which the astonishingly consistent story is told of gods that descended from heaven and or came through spiral vortices to materialize in bodies of flesh. From Rome to Greece, and before that to Egypt, Persia, Assyria, Babylonia, Sumer, the earliest records of civilization tell of the era when powerful beings known to the Hebrews as watchers, and in the book of Genesis as the B'nai Ha-Elohim, the sons of God, mingled themselves with humans, giving birth to part celestial, part terrestrial hybrids known as Nephilim. The Bible says this happened when men began to increase on earth and daughters were born to them, when the sons of God saw the women's beauty, and they took wives from among them to sire their unusual offspring. I believe a record of this is recorded in Genesis 6:4 when it says there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown.
At least one of them was part of an archaeological dig. It's old. At least one of them is old. I don't know if it was the one I worked on, but I remember something to do with an archaeological dig. That means it's not just old, it's ancient.
But what does that mean? It's actually more simple than you might think. What you're about to hear is the very best explanation I've ever heard. It's from my interview with Timothy Albarino. And unfortunately, the video part of this conversation was corrupted on the memory card, and the only thing that was left is my backup audio. Make sure you listen to the very end, because what you're about to hear has never been said like this.
What we have in the Genesis 6 affair are extraterrestrial interlopers who are descending to the earth from some extraterrestrial realm. And they're likely descending to the earth on the summit of Mount Hermon, almost assuredly at the helm of advanced aerospace vehicles. In other words, they're showing up in what we would call UFOs, perhaps even saucers. And there's this misconception that angels have wings, and that when they picture these angelic beings, these watchers descending to the earth, that they're flapping their wings and they're landing like storks or something like that, which is complete nonsense. The watchers showed up in advanced aerospace vehicles, and they had high technology with them. A technology that's probably many, many centuries more advanced. It's important to understand that when we talk about the watchers, what we are referring to is an angelic race of beings. This is a race, and when I say the elder race, I am in fact referencing the angels, those beings. And when we think about those beings, the elder race, we should not be thinking about quote-unquote spiritual beings, ethereal beings with wings who just transport themselves around by magic, basically, or flap their wings, and are these very ethereal creatures. Rather, we should think about angels, and this is a biblical perspective. This is not a sci-fi perspective. This is a biblical perspective. We should think about angels as extraterrestrial beings. They are extraterrestrial. The term extraterrestrial simply means not from the earth, a provenance other than the earth, an origin other than planet Earth. Well, that's given. We know that that's the case within the biblical narrative, because the angels pre-existed the earth. The sons of God pre-existed the earth. So they're obviously not from the earth. They're not earthborn. We are earthborn, and the Nephilim are also earthborn. That's part of what the term means. Earthborn. That's part of what the term in Greek for giant means. Earthborn. So We are specifically earthborn. Our provenance is planet Earth. Angels are not earthborn. Their provenance is not planet Earth. They are from elsewhere in the universe. They are therefore, by definition, extraterrestrial. Terrestrial meaning Earth. They are extraterrestrial. They are from elsewhere in the cosmos. They are also alien. They're not human. So they also fit the description of alien. These are not anti-biblical terms. These are accurate terms that correctly define these beings. They are extraterrestrial, and they are alien to the human species. And they are in possession of advanced technology, including advanced aerospace vehicles, i.e. UFOs, what we call UFOs. So they have knowledge. They have more knowledge of the universe than we do. That means they have more knowledge pertaining to chemistry, pertaining to physics, pertaining to mathematics, pertaining to astronomy, much more knowledge than we do. And they have derived much more advanced technological implements than we have. Number one, this race, the elder race, has been around a lot longer than us. Mankind was created to be a little lower than the heavenly beings and the angels. So biologically speaking, cognitively and physically, our physiology is lesser than theirs. Their physiology is greater than ours. In other words, biologically speaking, they are superior to us. Without their technology, just biologically speaking, they are superior to us. They are a superior race. But then when you throw in their knowledge and their technology, they are also far more technologically advanced than we are. Angels are not traversing the heavens in horse-drawn chariots. Horses don't fly. They're not like Santa Claus flying through the sky, with a sled being pulled by reindeer. Angels are navigating the heavens in advanced aerospace vehicles, in saucers and the other UFOs. But they're not the only ones. So my perspective of the antediluvian world, the world before the flood, is a little bit different than a lot of other people's perspective. I don't imagine this world in which you just have mankind becoming very wicked and degenerate and committing all kinds of offenses against God. And then God just is angry with mankind because of his sin and sends a flood. The story is much more intricate than that. And quite frankly, much more interesting. What we have is a scenario in which the Watchers were the living gods walking among men, and their hybrid offsprings happened to be giants. And these giants were oppressing mankind. And as I said, because they were human hybrid offspring, because they were human Watcher hybrids, they had legal authority through the birthright of Adam. They had legal authority to govern the earth. And because they were giants, it was not difficult for them to overthrow every human potentate. It was the perfect plan, if you think about it, from the Watchers. How do we ensure that our human hybrid offspring can take dominion of the earth? Well, that wouldn't be very difficult if they were all giants. A league of giants who would have been looked at as demigods and worshipped. And the Watchers would have been worshipped as gods walking among men. And this was the scenario unfolding in the earth before the flood. And so you had the gods who were manifest, you had their hybrid offspring who were giants. They took dominion of the earth, and the gods, according to Greek mythology and to the mythologies of many ancient civilizations, the Greeks say that the gods apportioned among themselves the earth. They apportioned the earth among themselves. They divided it up, and they each became the rulers of their own kingdoms. And of course, I believe that the Greek mythology regarding the gods is a reference to the history regarding the Watchers, the true history of the Watchers and their hybrid sons. And so the Watchers set up a global empire, and each of them had their own kingdom, and their kingdoms were governed by their sons, again, who were human enough to legally govern the earth. They usurped the dominion of mankind, and mankind was oppressed. They were living under the worst dystopia you can imagine. The giants, and according to the book of Enoch, men were required to feed the giants, to sustain them. And so I don't know how many giants there were, but they were forcing the human inhabitants of the earth to feed them, to sustain them, and probably were bringing sacrifices and worshiping their fathers, the Watchers, and prostrating before their hybrid sons, who were the kings over these empires, these giants. And eventually, when mankind could no longer satisfy the appetites of the giants began to devour mankind, to devour men. And so it became this dystopic nightmare on earth, in which not only was mankind working, slaving to provide food and sustenance for the giants, they then became the food. And it's likely in my mind that the Watchers were requiring of mankind human sacrifices that were to be brought to their hybrid sons. In other words, that each village or each city would have to produce human beings who would be brought to be consumed, to be devoured by the giants. And so this is a nightmarish scenario unfolding on the earth before the flood. It wasn't just that mankind was really sinful. It was that mankind was being devoured. Mankind was going to war with one another and killing and slaughtering each other in these massive wars that were taking place before the flood, and every kind of perversion and evil and corruption was rampant on earth, yes, but at the same time you have the Watchers and their giant sons who were devouring mankind and were governing the earth. And so the earth was usurped from the offspring of Adam, from the sons of Adam. And it's very interesting because both in the book of Genesis and also in the Enochian account, there's this phrase, and I'm going to get it wrong, so I'll paraphrase it, and mankind began to call upon the name of the Lord, or something to that effect. And it's at that point that the decision is made to send the flood. Why? Because you have the regents of the earth, mankind, whose authority, whose dominion was usurped by the hybrid sons of the Watchers, beginning to petition heaven. They're petitioning heaven. So this is like it's a response, it's a judicial response from the great judge who's looking down at what's happening on the earth. And in one sense, mankind was just reaping what he sowed. They struck this deal with the Watchers, and this is the result. And now they're suffering the consequences of their actions. But God has compassion. He hears the cry of mankind. He is sympathetic to the suffering that's happening on the earth as men are petitioning him for redress against the Watchers and their giant offspring. And God decides to intervene. And a judgment is pronounced from heaven, and God dispatches some angels to go and do various things. And what the angels do basically is one of them is charged with inciting the sons of the Watchers, the giants, to war with one another. And that's what happens. The giants go to war with one another. And so you can imagine these hybrid kingdoms ruled by these giants going to war with one another. This is what happened. And I don't think it was, big stupid Disney giants with clubs on their shoulders.
Technologies, right?
I think this was a war involving technology. These were kingdoms ruled by the giant hybrid sons of the Watchers going to battle with one another, very likely with kinetic weapons of war. Another angel is dispatched to seize the watchers and to put them in chains and to force them to watch the destruction of their sons as they go to battle with one another. And so this is the redress from the King of Heaven. He's going to cause the giants to go to war with one another and annihilate each other. This is before the flood. To annihilate each other, and he's going to force their fathers, their angelic fathers, to watch the destruction of their beloved sons. And this is what's unfolding on the earth in the pre-flood world. So it's like, it's like the Lord of the Rings or something. It's these massive battles happening and nation against nation, but these nations are governed by hybrid giants, and they utterly destroy each other. When we think about technology, high technology in the antediluvian world, I don't believe that all of civilization was in possession of high technology or of advanced knowledge. In fact, the Book of Enoch gives us hints as to what the situation really was, and that is that the Watchers taught mankind certain things. They taught them how to make weapons of war and so forth. But they reserved the greater mysteries, the greater secrets for their sons, which is logical. If you want your sons to have supremacy, you're going to imbue them with better knowledge and with better technology so that they can maintain dominance over the rest of the population, and also their wives. They also taught their wives. So the way that I look at the pre-flood world is, rather than saying, well, there was an advanced civilization, the most accurate way to contemplate this situation is that we're dealing with something like a Bronze Age or an Iron Age civilization, generally speaking. But within this civilization was a fraternity of beings who were exceedingly advanced. And the best way to illustrate this, I think, is to reference the movie Stargate. Do you remember the original Stargate? Not the TV series, I never saw it, but the movie, the original Stargate with Kurt Russell, in which they go through this Stargate and they go to another planet. And on this planet, wherever it is, there is a Bronze Age civilization. They encounter a Bronze Age civilization that would be very much like the ancient Egyptians. Indeed, in that movie, it was the ancient Egyptians who were brought there. So it was this Bronze Age civilization. But who was ruling over this Bronze Age civilization? A technologically advanced extraterrestrial race. And this fraternity within this civilization was in possession of advanced technology, whereas the Bronze Age people had swords and whatever. This fraternity, this extraterrestrial fraternity, had these rods that were shooting plasma, and they could fly. Their pyramid was a ship or whatever. So that's the way that I contemplate the pre-flood world. You have a Bronze or perhaps a Iron Age level civilization. That's the majority of the populace. They're worshiping the Watchers as gods, and they're prostrating before their giant sons as the potentates, the kings of the earth, and the sons and the wives of the Watchers, and the Watchers themselves are operating advanced technology. So the Watchers are flying around in saucers, and their sons are in possession of advanced technology, and their wives are in possession of advanced technology. These are gods among men. So when those kingdoms go to war with each other, it's a kinetic war. It's a war in which technology is being deployed. That's the way that I conceptualize the pre-flood world. Now, is that the way it really was? I don't know. But it doesn't make sense to me that there was a situation in which the masses of mankind were in possession of advanced technology. Why? Because we would find more evidence of that. And so this is the golden age of yore, which is referenced by every primary ancient culture on Earth, in different ways, of course, with different terminology. But the premise is the same. This is the time in which the gods lived among men. It's called Zep-Tepi by the Egyptians. The first time when Osiris and Isis and the other gods of the Egyptians dwelt among men. It was a golden age in which the knowledge of the gods was proliferating, and the people were benefiting from the direct rule of these advanced extraterrestrial beings. And it was a time in which the hybrid offspring of the gods, because the gods in the Golden Age, one of the things that marks the Golden Age, that is iconic of the Golden Age, is the gods copulated with human women and produced the demigods, the hybrid sons of their union, the union of the gods with mortal women. And this defines the Golden Age. And of course, the Golden Age is viewed through a laudatory prism by every ancient culture on earth, and laudatory meaning in a positive light. The Golden Age is viewed as this wonderful time, the best time the world has ever seen, by every ancient culture save one, the ancient Hebrews. The ancient Hebrews had the inverse of that perspective. They viewed the Golden Age as the worst time for humanity on earth. It was a time in which mankind was subjugated to the offspring of the Watchers and was literally being devoured by them. It was a tyranny the likes of which we have never before seen, but will see again briefly at the end of the age. There are a lot of stories in mythologies that are symbolic of the Golden Age, and the one that is most familiar to us is the story of Atlantis. Atlantis, in my opinion, is an allegory of the antediluvian age. Now, I also believe Atlantis was a real city, but primarily it was an allegory. It served as an allegory. Atlantis is it's a Greek story. Of course, it was related by Plato. And Atlantis was founded by Poseidon, who's one of the gods, the Olympian gods. Poseidon, the gods, just like in the book of Enoch, the gods divided the earth among themselves, and they each took a portion. They were allotted a portion. And Poseidon, his portion was the region in which Atlantis was, but Atlantis wasn't there yet. He built it, he created it. So Poseidon established this island and created this city on the island called Atlantis. So Poseidon is the patron of Atlantis. But what did Poseidon do? He took a human woman as his wife. He copulated with her. She conceived and gave birth to 5 sets of hybrid twins, who other ancient records intimate that they were giants. And of course, the most famous among them was Atlas. And so Atlas and his other brothers, his other twin brothers, ruled over Atlantis, but not just the island of Atlantis, rather the empire of Atlantis. And so if you take the story of Atlantis as an allegory of the Golden Age in general, it's a perfect depiction of what all the gods did. And by gods, of course, we mean these angelic watchers, these extraterrestrial interlopers who took wives, again, a legal transaction with mankind, with the sons of Cain, and allotted the earth into portions among themselves and established their own kingdoms, and their kingdoms were ruled by who? Their hybrid sons, because the Watchers were not authorized to govern the earth. They had to do it by proxy. They had to rule by proxy from behind the thrones of their hybrid sons. So again, Atlantis is a fitting allegory of the antediluvian age in general. But again, I happen to believe it was also a city, an actual city within this empire, this hybrid empire. Artifacts of the empire of the gods, as I call it, referencing the antediluvian world, still exist on Earth. And it is possible, it's possible, as fantastical as it sounds, that some of their technological devices, maybe even including stargates, if stargates are in fact real, maybe even including stargates, can still be found on the Earth, perhaps deep underground or in very specific places. And furthermore, this is conspiratorial, and this is just my opinion, but I believe that those kind of artifacts have indeed been found and are basically within the purview of the militaries of the world, rather than being in the purview of, say, the Smithsonian or something. Those would be military assets. You know, if you find a Stargate or some kind of advanced technology, that doesn't go to the vault of the Smithsonian. That goes to the R&D department of the Pentagon.